And welcome everybody to Ayn Rand Center UK Art Hour. And today, that's just what I'm calling it right now, but today I'm going to be doing a live reading of Horatius at the Bridge by Thomas McCullough Babington. Now, and I'll give you a little bit of context, but I want to let you know for those who are going to listen live, or if you want to come back and listen, or maybe they'll put on the podcast. Poetry is really helpful to listen to it and hear it. This poem is a little bit of a longer poem, but it isn't that hard to understand what's going on. The words aren't that complicated. Now, I will say there are some Roman names. There are some, towns that no longer exist in Italy and during the Etruscan Empire and during, this is the early days of Rome. So there are things that are going to be a little confusing, but I think that hopefully will be okay. I hope you'll survive. But a lot of it is powerful. It's one of the most inspirational poems of Roman antiquity. It's been an inspiration for thousands of years. It was a big inspiration for the Romans themselves. It comes from their early years of the Roman era. So we know of Rome, during Julius Caesar's, during the beginning of the empire, right, with Julius Caesar and Augustus. This is close to AD, basically. But if you go back 500, 600, 700 years, there's a history of their origin stories, and this is one of them that happens a couple of hundred years after Rome, the city, was founded, and things of that nature. And Horatius has been an inspiration, like I said, not only in Rome, and I'll talk about who Horatius is a little bit, and then I'll do a reading, but I want to give you a little bit of a background. Not only in Rome was he inspirational, but he has been inspirational throughout the Western world. And I would say that many of the values, you might have heard historians say we are all Roman now. And part of this is because these values have resonated so powerfully for thousands of years. And they even resonate, today to an American. If you watch a movie of Winston Churchill, there's been movies where they will quote Horatius, this poem, this ballad, this narrative story. So, that's how inspirational this story of Horatius, which is a historical mythical event from around 500 BC, that has taken us all the way till today, and it's still being inspirational. So I just wanted to give you kind of a feel. Horatius at the Gate, or Horatius at the Bridge, I should say, is a ballad poem written by Thomas Babington McCullough. And he is he's a 19th century writer. He lived from 1800 to 1859, and he wrote several poems about about Roman, I think they were called Roman lays, and they were about Roman values, and values that he thought were important in the West, because this is a guy that was actually bringing a lot of the West to India from Britain. So he's, categorizing them in these poems, in these stories, and these stories, still resonate. And I think this is a great poem. And I wanted to give you guys a couple of tips in reading, whether you stick around for the whole reading of this poem or not, because I think reading poetry is a very powerful and helpful thing something that you should be incorporating into your life. In fact, if you move to Austin, where I live, one of the things I'm going to be doing in 2022 with the Austin community that I co-run the Austin Social Club here in Austin. One of the things that I'll be incorporating is poetry and wine nights. And I think that's something that everyone should have in their life. I think it's an important value, and you should do this. Everybody brings a poem, you drink wine, have some food and everything, and people stand up and read their poem, right? And it could be a short couple of lines. It can be long. I've participated in these, and these are very fun. This one I probably wouldn't read like this at one of those, because this is going to be, I'm going to tell you now, and I hope you keep listening. Don't run away, but I don't want to lie to you. I'm going to read the whole poem, not the truncated poem. So the whole ballad, and a ballad is a narrative story done in verse. These are a lot of fun, but the whole ballad takes about 20 minutes to read. Yes, 20 minutes to read, 20 minutes to listen to. So it is like a short story. So think of it as like it's a story about this person, about Horatius at the bridge. And so I wouldn't normally do this long of a poem at one of these events, but because of the nature of, the live, I think it can work here. Okay, so the last thing before I start reading in just a second, I just want to quickly let you know a little bit more about the myth. So this is considered, or it is a myth, excuse me. And the myth is that a man, Horatius, the captain of the gate, stands guard against solo, kind of like the 300 story, if you know that Spartan story, stands guard at the final gate into the city of Rome and holds off an Etruscan army with two of his friends. And that's it. Just three men against a whole Etruscan army on this bridge. And, I don't want to give away too many details. I don't want to give away the ending because it's a gripping story about what's going on. But this is, like I said at the beginning of this live, this is in the early days of Rome, before Rome is a big empire, before it's all powerful, and they still had kings. So this is before the Republic. And Tarquin is the final king in the story of Rome, and he has been recently kicked out of Rome because his son Sextus. So remember these names. Tarquin is the king of Rome. His son Sextus had raped a Roman noblewoman, and so Rome, in a fury, kicked out these men, kicked out both Tarquin and his son, and then they set up, and then Tarquin, he went around and tried to get allies to come back to Rome and conquer Rome again. So he went to all these different allies, and think of Italy at this time in the Mediterranean, not as a big empire of one like United States of America, but it's just a whole bunch of tribes and cities. And one of the most powerful kings of the era is Lars Porsena. So Tarquin goes to Lars Porsena, who's the king of the Etruscan Empire. I'm giving you some tips here. Etruscan Empire, Lars Porsena. And he goes out, he gathers his men, and he says, I'll help Tarquin win back Rome because he's a king. He needs to get back to Rome. And he's going to help him get back there. And so they come onto Rome, and all the bridges of Rome have been collapsed. So there's no way to get in except there's one bridge over the Tiber River, which is a natural canal that helps, or a natural river that helps protect Rome. And that's basically, and then before the bridge goes down, Horatius needs to protect it. And that's all I'm going to tell you about the story. There are some elements. So this poem that I'm reading, the full ballad, is going to include a little bit of language that you may not know, and it's going to include some stories, some cities and some names you don't know, but that's okay. Just keep going with it. I think a lot of it you'll understand what's going on. It's a powerful poem. And, if you don't understand something, that's okay. You can always look it up while you're listening. And I'll try to, once in a while, if I can, like you could see in this first stanza, it says trysting day. That just means meeting day. That's it. There's things like that. It's going to start off talking about Lars Porsena and him gathering his army. Remember, he's the powerful king of the emperor of the Etruscan Empire. He's helping Tarquin, and they're going to go head over to Rome. And that's all I'm going to say. Now, feel free to ask questions while I'm reading. I am going to try and not read too fast, and you could read along. You could just listen if you want, whatever you want to do. I may take some, slight little sips and pauses, because I am trying to do this live, and I want you to get a feel for the live experience, because I hope that these poetry and wine things take off. I think it's a really great way to connect with your people in your community. It's fun. I will say, if you have kids who are, probably 5th grade at the lowest, 10th grade at the highest, ballads are wonderful ways to get them to read great poetry. And, and it's a very fun reading, and there's a lot of things you could do with it to make it fun. And this is one that I really love, ballads. by Hall. It's just a whole bunch of ballads, traditional ballads, all the Maud M. Hall, Maude M. Hall, whole bunch of ballads, including Horatius at the Bridge, and traditional ballads like Robin Hood, but traditional, the older ones, and modern ones like The Lady of Shalott is by Tennyson is another one. Okay, so I hope you're all ready. Take a sip. And we're going to get into a reading. And like I said, I might pause here and there because it is a bit. Okay, Horatius at the Bridge by Thomas Babington, Lord Macaulay. Lars Porsena of Clusium, by the 9 gods he swore that the great house of Tarquin should suffer wrong no more. By the 9 gods he swore it, and named a trysting day, and bade his messengers ride forth, east and west and south and north, to summon his array. East and west and south and north the messengers ride fast, and tower and town and cottage have heard the trumpets blast. Shame on the false Etruscan who lingers in his home when Porsena of Clusium is on the march for Rome. The horsemen and the footmen are pouring in amain from many a stately marketplace, from many a fruitful plain, from many a lonely hamlet, which, hid by beech and pine, like an eagle's nest, hangs on the crest of purple Apennine. From lordly Volaterre, where scowls the far-famed hold, piled by the hands of giants for godlike kings of old. From sea-girt Populonia, whose sentinels descry Sardinia's snowy mountaintops, fringing the southern sky. From the proud mart of Pise, queen of the western waves, where ride Massilia's triremes, that's ships, heavy with fair-haired slaves, from where sweet Clonis wanders through corn and vines and flowers, from where Cortana lifts to heaven her diadem of towers. Tall are the oaks whose acorns drop in the dark Assur's rill. Fat are the stags that champed the boughs of the Ciminian hill. Beyond all streams, Clytumnus is to the herdsman dear. Best of all pools the fowler loves, the great Falsinium mere. But now no stroke of woodman is heard by Osir's rill. No hunter tracks the stag's green path up the Ciminian hill. Unwatched, along Clytumnus grazes the milk-white steer. Unharmed, the waterfall may dip in the Volsinium mere. The harvests of Arretium this year old men shall reap. This year young boys in Umbro shall plunge in the struggling sheep. And in the vats of Luna this year the must shall foam round the white feet of laughing girls whose sires have marched to Rome. There be 30 chosen prophets, the wisest of the land, who always by Lars Porsena both morn and evening stand. Evening and morn the 30 have turned the verses o'er, traced from the right on linen white by mighty seers of yore. And with one voice the 30 have their glad answer given. Go forth, Lars Porsena, go forth, beloved of heaven. Go and return in glory to Clusium's royal dome, and hang round Nurskia's altars the golden shields of Rome. And now hath every city sent up her tale of men. The foot are 80,000, the horse are thousands 10. Before the gates of Sutrium is met the great array. A proud man was Lars Porsena upon the trysting day. For all the Etruscan armies, both were ranged beneath his eye, and many a banished Roman and many a stout ally. And with a mighty following to join the muster came the Tusculian Mamilius, prince of the Latian name. But by the yellow Tiber was tumult and affright. From all the spacious champaign to Rome men took their flight. A mile around the city, the throng stopped up the ways, a fearful sight to see through 2 long nights and days. Now the Romans are seeing the Etruscans. We were just watching the Etruscans a minute ago. For aged folk on crutches, and women great with child, and mothers sobbing over babes that clung to them and smiled, and sick men born in litters, high on the necks of slaves, and troops of sunburned husbandmen with reaping hooks and staves, and droves of mules and asses laden with skins of wine, and endless flocks of goats and sheep, and endless herds of kine, and endless trains of wagons that creaked beneath the weight of corn sacks and of household goods, choked every roaring gate. So there's all the Romans coming into Rome, or all the surrounding cities, fleeing the Etruscans. Now, from the rock Tarpeian, could the wan burghers spy the line of blazing villages, red in the midnight sky. The fathers of the city, they sat all night and day. For every hour some horseman came with tidings of dismay. To eastward and to westward have spread the Tuscan bands, nor house, nor fence, nor dovecote in Crustumerian stands. Verbenna down to Ostia hath wasted all the plain. Astur hath stormed Janiculum, and the stout guards are slain. I wis in all the Senate there was no heart so bold, but sore it ached and fast it beat when that ill news was told. Forthwith uprose the consul, uprose the fathers all. In haste they girded up their gowns and hied them to the wall. They held a council, standing before the river gate. Short time was there, ye well may guess, for musing or debate. Outspake the consul roundly, the bridge must straight go down, for since Janiculum is lost, naught else can save the town. Just then a scout came flying, all wild with haste and fear. To arms, Sir Consul, Lars Porsena is here. On the low hills to westward, the consul fixed his eye and saw the swarthy storm of dust rise fast along the sky. And nearer, fast and nearer, doth the red whirlwind come, and louder still, and still more loud, from underneath that rolling cloud, is heard the trumpet's war note proud, the trampling and the hum. And plainly and more plainly, now through the gloom appears, far to left and far to right, in broken gleams of dark blue light, the long array of helmets bright, the long array of spears. And plainly and more plainly, above the glimmering line, now might ye see the banners of 12 fair cities shine. But the banner of proud Clusium was highest of them all, the terror of the Umbrium, the terror of the Gaul. And plainly and more plainly, now might the burghers know, by port and vest, by horse and crest, each warlike Lucumo, there Cilnius of Arretium on his fleet roan was seen, and Astur of the fourfold shield, girt with the brand none else may wield. Tolumnius with the belt of gold, and dark Verbenna from the hold by reedy Thrasymene. Fast by the royal standard, o'erlooking all the war, Lars Porsena of Clusium sat in his ivory car. By the right wheel rode Mamilius, prince of the Latian name, and by the left false Sextus that wrought the deed of shame. But when the face of Sextus was seen among the foes, Romans, a yell that rent the firmament from all the town arose. On the housetops was no woman, but spat towards him and hissed. No child, but screamed out curses and shook its little fist. But the consul's brow was sad, and the consul's speech was low, and darkly looked he at the wall, and darkly at the foe. Their van will be upon us before the bridge goes down, and if they once may win the bridge, what hope to save the town? Then out spake brave Horatius, the captain of the gate. To every man upon this earth, death cometh soon or late. And how can man die better than facing fearful odds for the ashes of his fathers and the temples of his gods? And for the tender mother who dandled him to rest, and for the wife who nurses his baby at her breast, and for the holy maidens who feed the eternal flame, to save them from false Sextus that wrought the deed of shame. Hew down the bridge, Sir Consul, with all the speed ye may. I, with two more to help me, will hold the foe in play. In yon straight path 1,000 may well be stopped by 3. Now who will stand on either hand and keep the bridge with me? Then out spake spurious Lartius, a Ramnian proud was he. Lo, I will stand at thy right hand and keep the bridge with thee. And out spake strong Herminius, of Titian blood was he. I will abide by thy left side and keep the bridge with thee. Horatius, quoth the consul, as thou sayest, so let it be. And straight against that great array went forth the dauntless 3. For Romans in Rome, in Rome's quarrel, spared neither land nor gold, nor son nor wife, nor limb nor life, in the brave days of old. Then none was for a party, then all were for the state. Then the great man helped the poor, and the poor man loved the great. Then lands were fairly portioned, then spoils were fairly sold. The Romans were like brothers in the brave days of old. Now Roman is to Roman more hateful than a foe, and the tribunes beard the high, and the fathers grind the low. As we wax hot in faction, in battle we wax cold. Wherefore men fight not as they fought in the brave days of old. Now while the 3 were tightening their harness on their backs, the consul was the foremost man to take in hand an axe. And fathers, mixed with commons, seized hatchet, bar, and crow, and smote upon the planks above, and loosed the props below. Meanwhile, the Tuscan army, right glorious to behold, came flashing back the noonday light, rank behind rank, like surges bright of a broad sea of gold. 400 trumpets sounded, a peal of warlike glee, as that great host with measured tread and spears advanced, and ensigns spread, rolled slowly toward the bridge's head, where stood the dauntless 3. The 3 stood calm and silent, and looked upon the foes, and a great shout of laughter from all the vanguard rose. And forth 3 chiefs came spurring before that deep array. To earth they sprang, their swords they drew, and lifted high their shields, and flew to win the narrow way. Anus, from green to Fernum, lord of the hill of vines, and Caius, whose 800 slaves sicken in Ilva's mines, and Picus, long to Clusium, vassal in peace and war, who led to fight his Umbrian powers from that grey crag where, girt with towers, the fortress of Necunium lowers o'er the pale waves of Nar. Stout Lartius hurled down Anus into the stream beneath. Herminius struck at Caius and clothed him to the teeth. At Picus, brave Horatius darted one fiery thrust, and the proud Umbrian's gilded arms clashed in the bloody dust. Then Ocnus of Falerii rushed on the Roman three, and Lausulus of Urgo, the rover of the sea, and Aruns of Volsinium, who slew the great wild boar that he had his den amidst the reeds of Cosa's fen, and wasted fields and slaughtered men along Albinio's shore. Herminius smote down Aruns, Lartius laid Ocnus low, right to the heart of Lausulus, Horatius sent a blow. Lie there, he cried, fell pirate, no more, aghast and pale. From Ostia's walls the crowd shall mark the track of thy destroying bark. No more Campania's hinds shall fly to woods and caverns when thy spy thy thrice accursed sail. But now no sound of laughter was heard among the foes. A wild and wrathful clamor from all the vanguard rose. 6 spears' length from the entrance halted that mighty mass, and for a space no man came forth to win the narrow pass. But hark, the cry is Astur, and lo, the ranks divide. And the great lord of Luna comes with his stately stride. Upon his ample shoulders clings loud the fourfold shield, and in his hand he shakes the brand, which none but he can wield. He smiled on those bold Romans, a smile serene and high. He eyed the flinching Tuscans, and scorn was in his eye. Quoth he, the she-wolf's litter stands savagely at bay, but will ye dare to follow if Astur clears the way? Then, whirling up his broadsword, with both hands to the height, he rushed against Horatius and smote with all his might. With shield and blade, Horatius right deftly turned the blow. The blow, though turned, came yet too nigh. It missed his helm, but gashed his thigh. The Tuscans raised a joyful cry to see the red blood flow. He reeled, and on Herminius he leaned one breathing space. Then, like a wild cat mad with wounds, sprang right at Astur's face. Through teeth and skull and helmet, so fierce a thrust he sped, the good sword stood a handbreadth out behind the Tuscan's head. And the great lord of Luna fell at that deadly stroke, as falls on Mount Avernus a thunder-smitten oak. Far o'er the crashing forest, the giant arms lie spread, and the pale augurs, muttering low, gaze on the blasted head. On Astur's throat, Horatius right firmly pressed his heel, and thrice and 4 times tugged amain, ere he wrenched out the steel. And see, he cried, the welcome, fair guests, that waits you here. What noble Lucomo comes next to taste our Roman cheer? But at his haughty challenge, a sullen murmur ran, mingled with wrath and shame and dread, along that glittering van. There lacked not men of prowess, nor men of lordly race, for all Etruria's noblest were round the fatal place. But all Etruria's noblest felt their hearts sink to see on the earth the bloody corpses, and the path the dauntless 3. And from the ghastly entrance, where those bold Romans stood, all shrank, like boys who, unaware, ringing the woods to start a hare, come to the mouth of the dark lair, where, growling low, a fierce old bear lies amidst bones and blood. Was none who would be foremost to lead such dire attack, but those behind cried forward, and those before cried back. And backward now and forward wavers the deep array, and on the tossing sea of steel, to and fro the standards reel, and the victorious trumpet peal dies fitfully away. Yet one man for one moment strode out before the crowd. Well known was he to all the three, and they gave him greeting loud. Now welcome, welcome, Sextus, now welcome to thy home. Why dost thou stay and turn away? Here lies the road to Rome. Thrice looked he at the city, thrice looked he at the dead, and thrice came on his fury, and thrice turned back in dread. And, white with fear and hatred, scowled at the narrow way, where, wallowing in a pool of blood, the bravest Tuscans lay. But meanwhile, axe and lever have manfully been plied, and now the bridge hangs tottering above the boiling tide. Come back, Horatius, loud cried the fathers all. Back, Lartius, back, Herminius, back ere the ruin fall. Back darted Spurius Lartius, Herminius darted back, and as they passed, beneath their feet, they felt the timbers crack. But when they turned their faces, and on the farther shore saw brave Horatius stand alone, they would have crossed once more. But with a crash like thunder fell every loosened beam, and, like a dam, the mighty wreck lay right athwart the stream. And a long shout of triumph rose from the walls of Rome, as to the highest turret tops was splashed the yellow foam. And like a horse unbroken, when first he feels the rein, the furious river struggled hard and tossed his tawny mane, and burst the curb and bounded, rejoicing to be free, and whirling down in fierce career, battlement and plank and pier rushed headlong to the sea. Alone stood brave Horatius, but constant still in mind, thrice 30,000 foes before, and the broad flood behind. Down with him, cried false Sextus, with a smile on his pale face. Now yield thee, cried Lars Porsena. Now yield thee to our grace. Round turned he, as not deigning those craven ranks to see. Not spake he to Lars Porsena, to Sextus not spake he. But he saw on Palatinus the white porch of his home, and he spake to the noble river that rolls by the towers of Rome. O Tiber, Father Tiber, to whom the Romans pray, a Roman's life, a Roman's arms, take thou in charge this day. So he spake, and speaking, sheathed the good sword by his side, and with his harness on his back, plunged headlong in the tide. No sound of joy or sorrow was heard from either bank, but friends and foes in dumb surprise, with parted lips and straining eyes, stood gazing where he sank. And when above the surges they saw his crest appear, all Rome sent forth a rapturous cry, and even the ranks of Tuscany could scarce forbear to cheer. But fiercely ran the current, swollen high by months of rain, and fast his blood was flowing, and he was sore in pain, and heavy with his armor, and spent with changing blows, and oft they thought him sinking, but still again he rose. Never, I ween, did swimmer in such an evil case struggle through such a raging flood, safe to the landing place. But his limbs were borne up bravely by the brave heart within, and our good father Tiber bare bravely up his chin. Curse on him, quoth false Sextus, will not the villain drown? But for this stay, ere close of day, we should have sacked the town. Heaven help him, quoth Lars Porsena, and bring him safe to shore, for such a gallant feat of arms was never seen before. And now he feels the bottom. Now on dry earth he stands. Now round him throng the fathers to press his gory hands. And now with shouts and clapping and noise of weeping loud, he enters through the river gate, borne by the joyous crowd. They gave him of the cornland that was of public right, as much as 2 strong oxen could plow from morn till night. And they made a molten image and set it up on high. And there it stands unto this day to witness if I lie. It stands in the comitium, plain for all folk to see, Horatius in his harness, halting upon one knee. And underneath is written, in letters all of gold, how valiantly he kept the bridge in the brave days of old. And still his name sounds stirring unto the men of Rome, as the trumpet blast that cries to them to charge the Volscian home. And wives still pray to Juno for boys with hearts as bold as his who kept the bridge so well in the brave days of old. And in the nights of winter, when the cold north winds blow, and the long howling of the wolves is heard amidst the snow, when round the lonely cottage roars loud the tempest's din, and the good logs of Algidus roar louder yet within, when the oldest cask is open and the largest lamp is lit, when the chestnuts glow in the embers and the kid turns on the spit, when young and old encircle around the firebrand's close, when the girls are weaving baskets and the lads are shaping bows, when the good man mends his armor and trims his helmet's plume, when the good wife's shuttle merrily goes flashing through the loom, with weeping and with laughter, still is the story told, how well Horatius kept the bridge in the brave days of old. Okay, so that is the poem Horatius at the Bridge. If you listened all the way through, which it looks like there are a few of you who may have, so thank you for sticking around. That is a full reading of a ballad. And you noticed if you listen that I made a few mistakes, but just kept on going. And, you know, I like I said, I encourage people to do this kind of thing with your friends, with your family. I think it's very powerful. And I'll just end by saying that this poem is, I mean, if you listen to it, I think you can understand why this kind of heroic man against, you know, millions type story. You know, we have the story of 300, we have the Gladiator, we have Braveheart to some degree, right? We have these stories like this. And what I love about poetry and the power of poetry is that you could do a 2-hour, 3-hour movie. You could do, you know, a 1,500 page novel. There's so much that you could read, but all of the power of what's in those stories is compacted, even though this is a 570 line. And Pablo, thank you for listening. I appreciate that. But, you know, this is a powerful poem compacted. And there are other poems that are much more compact, and it still packs the powerful punch. And for me personally, one of the reasons why I'm so proud to work at the Ayn Rand Institute, for instance, if you didn't know that I work at the Ayn Rand Institute, this is the story I always feel is that, you know, I was just listening to Dr. Ben Bayer and Dr. Ankar Gate do a great show that I recommend everybody listen to, Roe on the Brink, about Roe v. Wade and what's going on. And they talk about the two sides, right? It's like there's two sides. There's the conservative side and the Democratic side, and they're making these arguments, and none of them are able to make the right arguments about defending individual liberty and defending a person's right, except for us. We're the only ones on the planet. It's us against the world. And if you don't have this kind of poetry and this kind of artwork and this kind of novel and this kind of movie in your life, that, you know, not just like, oh, this is cool, and you know, it's 2 hours of respite and pleasure, which is great, where you don't think about it, but that you really think about Lars Porsena and and Horatius at the Bridge, and that vision, that model of him, and all these words and all, you know, it's beautiful language, and just go through the language and just really enjoy how he describes the Tiber as, you know, a tawny a horse, and that adds to the whole feeling, and it's such a more powerful way, and the rhythm of the language. So I hope you go and read this, because I promise you that if you read this like I did out loud, and then try to read something normal, you're going to read that normal thing in the same kind of rhythm. It kind of, because that's the impact that language has. Language is the medium of your thoughts. And it's really powerful to have poetry impact your thoughts and your consciousness in that way. So since I don't have any questions, I really appreciate everybody for sticking around and listening. I hope you guys share the poem and, support ARC UK and the work that they're doing and providing platforms for great poetry, and go start a wine and poetry night. So thank you very much, and we'll see you next week.